What's happening, financial coaches? It's Pete here. I want to talk to you today about something that I call don't be infuriated by things, in general. But don't be infuriated by things that you think are unjust because it may actually be a knowledge gap on your end. So, one of the things that I see with financial coaches, as well as experts in any industry, is oftentimes they just pile on to something that they think is completely unjust. Whether it's fees being charged by someone or commissions being paid by an insurance company or whatever it might be, right? And this is kind of clickbait material for people that write news articles and blogs. And you'll see these on a lot of places like, did you know that the average person will pay $100,000 in investment fees by the time they reach retirement? Well, that might be true. But did they get value out of it? That's more important. Did they make $1 million more than they would have if they hadn't paid those fees, right? Those are really the only appropriate measurements I think that are important. Is it okay to pay a real estate agent a selling commission? I think so because the numbers certainly seem to justify that. I saw something where, on average, people that sell by owner get something like 12 or 13% less for their home than when they use a real estate agent. So it certainly seems like you should pay the 2 or 3% commission and get that extra 10, 11, 12%, right? So I'm not saying that any of these are particularly bad. I'm not saying that they're necessarily good. You certainly want to look at them. But I see a lot of people, and I think the temptation is when you are in an industry, you are kind of on this high and mighty position where you're infuriated by the unjust treatment of something. And for financial coaches and people in the financial industry, I've seen a lot where they say, hey, payday loans are just terribly unjust. Overdraft fees are just terribly unjust. And they might be, right? But I saw a really good thread by someone who wrote that I'm having this client and I just can't believe it that they have used a payday loan, several times this year, and they have paid at a rate of 200% interest because it was a $20 flat fee for a 2-week loan. And I cannot believe this stuff exists and how they're preying on people. And I saw a really great response by someone that wrote, listen, I'm a financial coach and I can just tell you that I have used payday loans in the past too when I had no other choice. I didn't have anything to pawn. I had no family to back me up. I had nowhere else to get cash and I needed to put food on the table for the kids that night. Right? It was the only place I could get $200. And yes, I paid a $20 fee for a 2-week loan on a couple $100. But to be honest, there was no other alternative. I didn't own a car to do a title loan. I didn't have anything else, right? And if I hadn't had that, my kids would have gone hungry. And, this guy called him out a little bit and said, listen, so I get that it's expensive. But if you want to ban this, if you don't want this to exist, if you find it so unjust, then you don't have to use it. And yes, some of these people don't have any alternative, but it can mean the difference between eating and not eating. And so he wrote that he was grateful that it existed. And he was grateful when he started having other alternatives, when he had some spare cash, when he had an emergency fund, when he had options for lower cost financing, certainly. But I think it's kind of easy when someone is sitting in a fairly comfortable space. They have maybe multiple alternatives. They maybe have the safety net of an emergency fund. They might have the safety net of friends and family. I think that's a very underrated one. And they can say that they are infuriated that something exists. But the reason something exists and the reason it's used by people is because oftentimes it's the best alternative they have. So I get that it's easy to be upset at some of these things. And some of these things can be predatory. And some of these things can be very expensive. And some of these things are a poor choice or a poor alternative to some of the other options. But sometimes they're the only thing people have. And sometimes the people that are using them are just grateful that they have them too. So whether it's a commission or the way someone charges or the pricing structure, or maybe they are priced very high to the market or whatever it is, one of the things that I would encourage you to be is understanding that it's easy to be infuriated kind of at the optics of it at face value, but there might be a lot of other things that make it appropriate that actually might be really helpful to people. And when we say, hey, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't pay that fee, or you shouldn't pay that commission, or you should never use this broker or this fund or that company or that bank or this credit card or whatever it might be, I think we might be doing ourselves a disservice, and we might be talking to someone who actually is very grateful and appreciative for something that we are bashing. And it looks bad, and it looks bad to us because they say, hey, now I can't open up, I can't say why I use that and why I was grateful that it existed at that time. And so you may be kind of closing a door to an open and honest conversation with a client if you are overly aggressive on bashing something or going overly negative on something, right? And there may be a lot of things behind the scenes that we don't understand. So anyway, um, it's probably easy to be infuriated by things that seem obnoxious or predatory, but I would encourage you to be patient and temper your tone and maybe explore with people why they use something or why they felt they had to use something or why they continue to use something, right? As opposed to being overly judgmental about it. So hopefully that helps. I'll see you later.